Good morning. Welcome if you're online on YouTube. It's great to be with you as well as a church today. My name is Luke and I'm the curate here at Ascension. And we are at the beginning of Lent, as Marcus said. And it's a pretty long season of the church's year of giving things up, of fasting and preparing. And this long season will eventually take us up to Good Friday, Jesus' death on the cross. So that's kind of the path that we're beginning on at the moment. But I was thinking about this and thinking it's all a little bit confusing because we've got our seasons like spring, summer, etc. But then you've got all these other seasons that are kind of imposed on the top if you're a follower of Jesus. And I was thinking, what's all this about? How can we sort of understand what we're doing here with things like Lent? And I've been reading a writer called Enuma Okoro. I don't know if you've ever come across her, but she's a writer that I'm really enjoying at the moment, and I recommend going and checking her out. I've got a picture of her up here, which is going to come up. And I just wanted to begin by reading something that I came across in a book that she co-wrote about time and about how we order our time. And just as a bit of a heads up, she's writing from an American perspective here, but here's what she says. Every sturdy society has created its own calendar according to its own values. If we in the church are going to take our citizenship in heaven seriously, we must reshape our minds by marking our calendars differently. We must remember the holidays of the biblical narrative rather than the festivals of the Caesars, and celebrate feast days to remember saints rather than war heroes and presidents. Our inception as the church was on Pentecost, not on July 4th. Our fireworks should go off a few months earlier than America's. And instead of commemorating people who sacrificed themselves in order to kill for their country, we find a deeper and more powerful observance on Good Friday when we remember that Jesus willingly died for everyone in the world, even his enemies, instead of killing them to change the world. I think she makes a really helpful point. If we're followers of Jesus, we're followers of the maker of the whole universe, come to live a human life and die for us. And if that's who Jesus is, then no wonder we want to order our time around him. And the season of Lent is part of that. It's part of that Jesus-centered ordering of our time. And this Lent, as a church, we're going to be exploring a deeper challenge that Jesus gives us, not just to order our months and our years for him, but to order our days for him. As Marcus was saying, this Lent, we're going to explore the challenge of a quiet time, also known as prayer time, God time, whatever else you might call it, a daily personal period of time ordered, set aside for you to spend with Jesus. Just as we, followers of Jesus, crown our years with Easter, we're going to explore what it means to crown our days individually with a quiet time. And over the coming weeks, we're going to explore the ins and outs of what quiet times might look like, the different ways they may look, whether it's changing nappies or anything else. But today, we're beginning just by facing up to the raw challenge that Jesus leaves us, which is this: show up. Show up to your quiet time. That's it. To quote Enuma Okoro again from a different place, she says, Jesus daringly invites us to approach the God of the universe as Abba, as our Father, or as a mother caring for her little chicks. Our God is, she says, personal and wildly in love with each of us. So show up. That's who God is. He's wildly in love with you, so show up for him. He doesn't need you to show up. God will still be God if you're not there at your quiet time, so you don't need to feel guilty about that. But he is waiting for you each day, wanting you to show up and encounter him because he loves you. The author of this book that Marcus showed is called Brian Heasley, and he makes a helpful point that the location and the time can be different for everyone when it comes to quiet times. This is a quote from the book. He says, it could be in your car, in your gym, out in the open air, or even in your bed. Some of those places may take a little more effort to turn into a quiet space, but it can be done. Taking time in the morning, he says, is a great way to start the day. But it may be that a less distracted time for you is a walk during your lunch break, or perhaps you feel more able to focus at the end of the busyness of whatever your regular day holds. What's important, he goes on, is that you find a location for encounter and find a time for encounter. I'll just read that last bit again. What's important is that you find a location for encounter and find a time for encounter. Choose where it's going to be, when it's going to be, and show up. In the passage we read just now, Jesus is having a really busy day. The whole town has gathered at the door of the house where he is, and he's been healing people and casting out demons. Now just imagine for a moment if the whole of Balham came to Ascension this morning, had just turned up at the door asking for prayer for healing. Or even less, just imagine that our little parish of Ascension, about 9,000 people I think, imagine if all of them turned up, 9,000 people at the door asking for prayer. It would be all hands on deck. We'd be phoning up our friends, we'd be phoning up other churches saying, quick, send us reinforcements, we need help here. But even in the middle of all of that bustle and intensity and busyness, Jesus carves out a time and shows up for Abba, his father. The passage says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Then, it goes on, his friends hunt him down and say, Jesus, come on, what are you doing? Everyone's looking for you. And Jesus dutifully gets up and thrusts himself back into the busyness and bustle that is equally his calling and his vocation. Okay, he says, let's go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so that I can preach there also, because this is why I've come. In the middle of an impossibly busy day, Jesus shows up for Abba, his father. He intentionally makes that time to be with his Father in heaven. And if he needed that discipline, if the creator of the universe, living a human life, needed that discipline, then surely we need that too. So the challenge that he gives us is to do likewise, to intentionally make time each day to show up, come and sit with Jesus, and join him in that conversation, in that quiet place, in that encounter with the Father. And perhaps for you that will look like a time of silent prayer, sitting, breathing, praying. Perhaps it will look like having your Bible open in front of you and reading through a book bit by bit. Maybe it will look like using a prayer app, like Lectio 365 is a really good one, which I know many of us use. Or perhaps you'll be sitting and writing, you'll be journaling, or even drawing or painting. As I said, we'll explore the different possibilities and the ins and outs of what this quiet time could look like over the coming weeks. But as we leave this building today with this challenge to simply show up each day, I want to give you some advance warning about just one problem that you may run into very quickly. This problem is distraction. You may be the very best, with the very best of intentions, be there showing up for God. You've carved out your quiet time, you're there. Well done. You've got your cup of tea, maybe you've lit your candle, and you're just ready to go. But as soon as you're there, something will just cross your mind. Oh, did I lock the front door? And you'll be at the front door, and before you know it, you're checking the post, or you're hoovering, or something like that. Or, oh, what do I need to do before that meeting tomorrow again? Oh, and before you know it, 10 minutes has gone by with you thinking about the list of stuff you've got to do tomorrow. Or, oh, what that person said to me yesterday was so out of order. I can't believe they said that. What kind of person would do that? And then before you know it, you're too angry to focus and you don't feel in the mood anymore, and you blow out your candle and that's it. The moment's gone. You get the picture. There are so many different ways that we get distracted. And it can be so disheartening when you finally have done it, you've shown up for your quiet time, and immediately distraction hits you square between the eyes. But I want to encourage you that distraction is okay. You don't need to be put off by distraction. C.S. Lewis has a helpful thing that he says about this. I'll just quote him. He says, "We are always falling in love or quarreling, looking for jobs or fearing to lose them, getting ill, recovering, following public affairs. If we let ourselves, we shall always be waiting for some distraction or other to end before we can really get down to our work. He goes on, the only people who achieve much are those who want knowledge so badly that they seek it while the conditions are still unfavorable. Favorable conditions never come. I'll just say that again. He's talking about people who seek knowledge while the conditions are still unfavorable. Favorable conditions never come. In other words, distractions will always be around us. You will never have a quiet time without distraction. So it's not about getting rid of distractions. Just to repeat that again, it's not about getting rid of those distractions. Rather, it's about changing your relationship to your distractions. Brian Heasley in the book has some really good advice on it, which I suggest you read. But for now, I just want to encourage you with an analogy that I found really helpful when I've been distracted during my quiet times. I heard this from an American Catholic priest called Martin, who I met once, and apologies if you've heard me use this analogy before. But Martin says, imagine you're in an old school red phone box. I can just about imagine being in a red phone box, or remember, I think being in one once with my mum when I was a child. But then they kind of fell out of fashion and they're a bit obsolete now, aren't they? But anyway, Martin says, imagine being in a phone box. And there's a bee in the phone box. And you just can't help swatting at the bee. It's buzzing around, it's bumping into you, and you don't want it to sting you, and you're panicked, and this bee is just making your blood boil. So often, that's what distraction feels like during your quiet time. Oh, there it is, just want to bat it away. And before you know it, you're off course, and you've lost focus, and is ruined. But, Martin says, Jesus came to give us life to the full. And the reality is you're not trapped in a phone box. You can open the door. Jesus comes and says, don't worry, life with me is bigger than being in here. So open the door of the phone box. And you do. You push the door open, and you step outside, and you find yourself in a meadow brimming with flowers and views of forests and hillsides around you. Can we have the slide up there? There, we've got it. Here we go. Here's a nice red phone box in the middle of a lovely field to aid your imagination. And this is actually a real place. This is about 10 miles away, south of here, in Banstead. So you can go here, get a selfie with the phone box in the lavender field. You can go to this very phone box. But for now, we're imagining you're in the phone box and you've opened the door and you're stepping out into this beautiful field. But oh no, the bee is also now coming out of the phone box with you. The bee's flown out too. And oh no, in fact, outside here in this beautiful field, there are loads of bees buzzing around. But after a moment, you realize, with all of this spaciousness and this beauty, I can just let the bee be. When the bee flies near you, you have freedom simply to look at it and say, oh, there's the bee. You don't manically swat at it or get in a fluster. Your relationship to the bee has changed. Your relationship to distraction has changed, because this is where you are, outside in this field. You're not in the phone box. So when you go home and show up to your quiet time and you experience distraction, in your mind, try opening that phone box and stepping outside. Don't let that fear of distraction put you off. Quiet times are simply times spent with your Maker. They are rich and important and rewarding, even with the mass of distractions that may be flying around. So tonight or tomorrow, just show up. Take time with Jesus in the solitary place. Know that this is you crowning your day. Know that by marking your daily calendar differently, you're reshaping your mind and your heart around Jesus. And know that God is pleased with you. He's pleased that you're there. He's pleased that you've shown up. He loves you so much, and it's such a delight to him that you're giving him your time. In a moment, we're going to have Holy Communion. This isn't a quiet time per se, but it is a chance to receive Jesus' body and blood in bread and wine, to receive from him, to speak to him, and to commit to him. So I encourage you, as we spend this time of sharing together in communion, Take it to make a commitment or recommit to show up. Show up for your Maker and your friend. Amen.